I'm Mike Reynolds. I've lived in Mamaroneck since 1988. Today, on the fourth installment of Pathology of an Incident, we're talking again with Louis Quiros. Louis has lived in the area a lot longer than I have. He's an educator, an activist, an advocate for personal introspection, philosophical reasoning, and societal change. He's also the author of two books, Another's Mind and Justice Unplugged, as you can see here. We're only a few weeks removed from the election, Louis, so we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. Don't know if your books cover election cycles, or we're just going to go on the premise that the creed as when voting results comes in, we're going to have some changes. What are you looking at here?
Well, my books, Mike, and thank you for being with me today, partnering over this project. My books, I did not write to. I'm not speaking about these books now because I want to sell them. I don't want the audience to think that I'm promoting my books. What I did, I wrote those books primarily for my students so that I can. What I was really teaching is how to connect the dots that education has to be interdisciplinary.
Okay.
That if you want to talk about any subject, economics, inflation, politics, the votes, electoral college, whatever, that to stick to that as a unit is impossible without talking about its philosophy. Why even vote? What is vote? What is democracy? So both of these books and everything that I've written, everything that I talk about, and the podcast that I have been, and the tables that I have served on, and the talk shows, everything that I do is related with a desire to teach, to connect the dots. Now I'm going to answer your question. There is nothing in these books that leaves out any question you may think you're going to ask me today, any question you may think of tomorrow, anything that you ask of me, if you mention the word Trump, election, Harris, whatever you mention is in the books without their name having to been there.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, we're not 2024 per se, but these are the things that guide.
You will understand Trump if you understand this.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about him. He, 45th president. He's going to be the 47th. Joining Grover Cleveland Alexander as the only guy to win non-consecutive terms. He won substantially by 2.5 million in the popular vote. By 90 votes on the electoral side. He swept all the so-called swing states. Louis, what does that say? I mean, I think there was a lot of polling that suggested that it was going to be a close race, and kind of early on, it didn't seem that was going to be the case. What were you thinking on the night of November 5th?
Well, I don't pay attention to the polls.
Okay.
If I paid attention to numbers, I'd be a very rich man because I would probably use what I know for sports and make a lot of money.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
So, those polls come out more often than. Yeah, and I believe them more, and they don't have the consequences that these polls have.
By a long shot. How much you bet? Anyway, that's a different thing.
Yeah, but what I want I want people to understand that the question that we need to understand, which it doesn't matter if it's Trump or anybody else, or we go back to George Washington, is that. Is to know that whether an intellectual authority exists. Now, Trump is not an intellectual authority, and that makes him more dangerous. That makes anybody else more dangerous.
Okay.
What's important, and this is a quote by Alexis de Tocqueville, because again, we're talking about philosophy. Again, I don't care about the topic. That in the age of authority, in the intellectual authority exists, it is important to know with democracy simply where does democracy reside and by what standard is it to be measured. Measured sort of addresses your question about the number of votes and the polls. Let's talk about the measurement. One of the worst acts of this country that I think also ruined it. I can stay here for weeks and hours. What policy has entered this country to change all numbers was the Citizens United case. The Citizens United case against the Federal Election Commission, which allowed corporations to participate and to give money in a campaign.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Now, how does that not addresses your question? The votes don't matter. Are we really a democracy? How many millions? Those statistics, I believe, 40 million lost by Harris, and how many did he put? These millions of dollars going in. That's who voted.
This is true. Yes, Bill.
And I could go on for other policies that had changed this country, and we're still talking about democracy because this country is so politically sexual and sexually political that if you want, you need to understand how power works. Lord Acton, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. And when you add money to it, that in order to understand power, it's like a fake orgasm.
Okay.
No, let's get with it, because in those scenarios, you have to, in order to be in love is part of democracy. Love, people, community. In order to understand that, you have to know what it is to have a broken heart.
All right, that's fair enough.
That's a metaphor that really defines what we are in democracy.
I'll be a little bit more prosaic. People brokenhearted that Harris didn't wind up in the White House or won't wind up in the White House. Biden bowed out under pressure. He looked like an old man, in the debate. She had 107 days to campaign. Did she have enough? What she went out there with, was it strong enough? I mean, are you surprised that she wound up on the wrong side of it?
I'm not surprised, because, as I said in prior broadcasts, if something surprises you, you're not paying attention.
Okay.
I lived across the street. I have pictures in my house with me sitting in front with my family, my parents, brothers and sisters, in front of Grant's tomb. Before it was Riverside Park, before there were swings. I mean, it's always Riverside Park.
Right.
I'm talking about swings. There were no swings there when I was.
Okay.
But there was Grant's tomb.
Right.
And I used to go in there. I couldn't get home without passing Grant's tomb on any particular day. And that was part of Harlem. I lived on 125th Street. If you understand Grant's tomb, if you understand Abraham Lincoln, if you understand that in 1492, this country would have never worked without globalization, without the free labor, without taking from those countries that have and those countries that don't have. There is no way that Harris could win. When we go back to the first black president that attempted to win and won, he had an opportunity to put him in members of the Supreme Court. That, to me, was one of the biggest disasters of his regime, besides the Guantanamo Bay that he promised he would close.
Okay.
Outside of that, what hurt me the most was not, like I said, Citizens United. Then I go back to what it meant for somebody else to put in the Supreme Court justices that he did during a time that Obama had the month to get them in. Now, we can debate all afternoon, which we're not, about the Congress would learn, they wouldn't have passed it, and would. Don't tell me that required us that go to the ballot box to start a revolution, revolt. He had to have had that power to vote.
Okay. In terms of, obviously, Barack Obama's first black president, is the country, Trump has won twice now. He beat Hillary Clinton. He beat Kamala Harris. Is the U.S. ready or will be at any time soon to have a woman lead the country?
It's not, right now it's not so much about the gender, because this country has gender issues with women. There's no doubt. This country has a problem, an epidemic of mental illness, and the way it defines and uses education, it needs a brighter, a smarter citizenship.
Okay.
That is the disgrace of this country. And I've said it before, the way public schools go, so does the nation. It is, you see how our young people have the lack of social contacts, walking around, communication, community, doesn't operate in this country. The Alexis de Tocqueville, and I have this one of the slides that you'll see later, indicate that the crime in the United States is, and that this is going to the 1800s, that when he came to the United States, all the Americans think alike. The word sameness is all over the place.
Yeah. Okay.
And that to me is a dilemma that keeps the women away. But I believe that, well, when it came to this election, getting off the track here a little bit, I did work for Sanders. Okay. When he ran a couple of times ago, and I think Sanders would have had a lot better shot at the election, at this most recent election. Okay. When you ask me about Harris and women, this country, politically sexual, sexually political, 1492. Where is this country going to go when Europe got here, and now they need women for a lot more reasons? The extinction of the citizens that were here, etc., and the immigration problems that came from that. 1790, you're going to see other slides. The Naturalization Act of 1790, which, in order to vote, have a voice, own property, you couldn't be black. The women couldn't vote till 1918.
Right.
So all these questions, we haven't solved the racism in this country, and I've left out one word because I'm trying to make it so obvious. This country has a patent on violence. It is the most violent country in the world because the uniform, going back to the Citizens United case, the uniform is not a rifle, it's not a khaki suit, it's not boots, it's a three-piece suit.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough.
And that controls.
Absolutely.
And you'll see it in the slides coming up.
Economics rules. Let's keep on the path of the election a little bit. So you talked about women. Obama was in office. Is there a point where we will see an Hispanic president anytime soon? I mean, again, and I don't know if this alarms you, I think there was a major change in the way that Hispanics voted this time around. Going back to 2020 and 2016, it was a much more favorable slant on the Democratic side. This time, Trump, I think actually more Latino men voted for Trump. Her base among Latino women shrank. I mean, what does that say? I mean, or, more assimilation there? Are Hispanics more mainstream? Are they more, again, in the idea that, yes, America is what it is?
First of all, I wish if it was America, it could be a Spanish person, but because it's the United States,
right,
it's not America. I mean, because if it was America, I'd like to have somebody like Simón Bolívar, which I've mentioned in other areas.
Right.
So we're talking about the United States. I do not see, and more important than seeing, I do not want a Latino president this early, because playing the odds again, he would probably be, in order to get that position, he would have to be so assimilated that he wouldn't be Spanish enough.
Okay. All right, I get you. Again,
and what I want is a Spanish person that will deal with the problem of the border,
right,
much more with the what I call international human rights issues. And we don't talk about international human rights here. We don't remember we don't remember or even want to talk about because we don't want to remember because we don't want to talk about it, whichever way you want to say it, that if without Mexico, we might not won World War II because who was running the factories, who was doing the growth, who was doing the farms, who was growing the crops, who was cutting it? The Mexicans. There was a program, and the same thing with the end of World War I, and the same thing during the 1930s. Without the real America that have been allowed to come here, and you'll see more information on this country would not have survived. Puerto Rico played a big role in making sure those ships didn't get through, trying to make sure the ships didn't get through into through the Caribbean, into the main street. Puerto Ricans fought in World War II, and my grandfather fought in World War I. My uncles from Venezuela fought also in World War II. So, when we got to be careful. When you cross the line when you talking about the United States Latino vote. Are we talking about America or we're talking about the United States? Because it makes the difference.
Okay. Your sensibilities about, we talked about assimilation, mainstreaming there. Is it so wrong though? I mean, I know that. Oh, that was good. You want people to think. You want people to think hard about a lot of different. Yes, I do. But again, in the general populace of this country, again, it kind of comes to the center. Your sense about that?
Do I want assimilation? I would hate it. I would die I would die not to have it. What do you think? You don't think I put my life at risk talking the way I do when I walk the streets, when I talk like this at Fordham, when I talk like this at wherever I'm talking? When I'm a speaker in front of a lot of people, you don't think I'm at? Of course I'm at risk. Here I am. I don't fear a verbal or physical attack. Those days are over for me. I had that as a youngster.
Okay.
Sameness is a dysfunctionality because scientifically it's not possible. It's not possible scientifically, socially, morality-wise, socially, religiously, there's psychiatrically. You can't have a psychiatrist treat me the way they're going to treat you. Even if we're the same age, which we're not, but even it doesn't matter. There is the concept of the melting pot is part of the problem, and it's racist. This country has not dealt with the issue of racism because it refused to admit that it is very, very racist. The melting pot, that was in my books. I still hear melting pot. There's no such thing. First of all, we don't want to melt. You don't want to melt. You like who you are. It's insanity because it's also not science. It's also science does not allow that to happen. No, assimilation will never. What works is the international human rights. That is what we have to. The dignity of why do you have to be live a specific way to be respected, to be given dignity? None of that makes sense. All of that is revolutionary. All of that will take it to the end of the world, to the end. I mean to the ending of this world.
Okay, all right. You throw out the word melting pot. President to become Trump again. He's been very adamant about closing the borders. He's going to deport, illegal aliens, whatever that might mean. I can't imagine you're happy.
No, I'm not happy because of his mindset. First, I don't even like the word illegal. We're not illegal. There's no such thing as an illegal person. God don't make, if you're religious, God doesn't make illegal people. We are undocumented, and because we don't have undocumented, doesn't make a person an illegal person. We don't call people are not illegal. They commit crimes, but that doesn't make them illegal. They have to pay for that incident. They don't have to pay their life and be viewed as an illegal. That's an illegal person. No, they're not. And why are they here? They're here because what they're buying here, the food that they're buying here is coming from their country. They're coming here because the voting, again, The United States has ruined their countries in terms of voting and democracy. There is no president in Latin America that the United States hasn't baptized their way and their way of thinking and attempted to assimilate and pay off. And that's why they're come here. We don't want to come here. My mother didn't want to come here. My father didn't want to come here.
So again, and I don't know if this is going to happen, there's an enactment to deport people that Mr. Trump doesn't believe should be here. I mean, isn't that just going to like foment a huge outcry? I mean, isn't that going to use the word violence? Isn't that going to happen like in a major way if that in fact transpires?
Absolutely, and I'll use the word violent. Trump didn't win an election democratically. He won it through violence. He won it through fear. He won it through paying people off. He won the election the old-fashioned capitalistic way. That's why I dislike that Citizens United case that people don't even talk about. Citizens United, first of all, we're always trying to change the contributions to PACs and to how they work, political action committees.
Right.
That's anti-democratic. Zip codes are anti-democratic. That depending on the zip code, that determines the quality of life you're going to get. So please, let's start connecting the dots. That's what they used to call me, Professor Connecting the Dots. Here comes Mr. Connecting the Dots.
Okay.
When you start doing this, you see that you are an accomplice to this mess. We are an accomplice to what we have. We are responsible for what we have.
A lot of young people voted for Trump. They're not connecting the dots in your view?
Well, I don't think a lot of people that voted for Trump have student loans out.
Okay.
So let's divide. Let's divide by what kind of student.
Okay. All right.
What kind of student do you think would have voted for Trump? Again, we're talking about the education process and what are we talking about hard hats? Who are we talking about that voted for Trump? Certainly, I know a lot of people that are scared about these student loans. And student loans allow people to eventually buy houses or not buy houses.
Right.
So let's not just throw words out there. Let's find out exactly what it means. Okay, they voted for him, but if you have no future, why not? Because the guy whose job you have is probably black, brown, or something else with an accent. And why should they be here? Let's. Why can't you think like a sociologist? A sociologist. Well, if this 20-year-old, 23-year-old paid for Trump, I guarantee you he's got no student loan now. And if he's got no student loan now, he's probably got no college degree. He probably doesn't have a good job either.
All right. We've discussed this briefly before. You question, this is huge, you question whether this nation will stand in the years ahead. You ask, what makes us believe that the USA is going to be around? Is it?
I think we know that now. It's not around.
Okay.
I don't see the country being around. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of animosity between states right next to each other. I see a lot of hatred. I see a lot of crime. I see a lot of killing. I see a lot of demonstrations and people jumping turnstiles. I see a lot of poverty. I see a lot of homelessness. I see a lot of this countries that are. When you say it's a country around, Mike, I don't see this country around now.
Okay.
And so we have to define what makes a country if the amount of homelessness and starvation and kids that are homeless are at the number levels that they are now. Is this country around because it has an address? An address doesn't create a country. An address doesn't mean that there's a house there. It's a building. We're talking about homes. When you look at the projects, look away those projects with the roaches and the rest. Are we around? We're not around now. Are we? I've wrote a couple now. When are we going to deal with, and everything I've said here today and prior sessions have been the world order. This world order, it's impossible for it to survive. We're talking 300 years old country,
Right.
as if we were 3,000 years, as if we were 300 years old, 3,000 years old. We're not. We're still a seed when we compare ourselves to the rest of the world. Only Europeans say this is the new world. This was never new. What new world? The first settlement. What are you talking about? Those that write the definitions control the results. I see the world order is going to take over. And at some point in time, and it even may be in my late years, this country, if it falls into a problem with Russia and China, they're going to welcome the Mexicans and Latin America into this country and give us citizenship. They cannot cope with that size. And we're not talking about Ukraine and Biden is trying to accelerate mines to help Ukraine into. Well, I was at a lecture with my mentor, Dr. John Hope Franklin, the Schlesinger Award, and he was my mentor. He gave the speech on democracy, and he talked about mines, which you will see later on, where you will see coming up the slides. And the United States is the biggest producer of mines in the world, and they're outlawed. Mines have been illegal for a long, long time because they eventually end up killing people and killing the crops, vegetation. And it's the United States that's producing them. There has to be a better way. So when you ask me if the United States is going to be around, is the world going to be around?
This is deep stuff here in LMC Media Studios. So as we get toward the end of this episode here, Luis, I mean, you've led a life that a lot of thinking, a lot of forethinking, a lot of things you'd like to have happen. I mean, no hope? Are we gonna get there? What can people do? What should people be doing?
They should be taking the public schools seriously. Public schools should be held accountable for better curriculums. We should deal with the issue of racism. There should not be a Black History Month. There should be Black history. There is no United States without Black history and white history. It should be treated as one. How many people know that what's been in the news was the assassination attempts on Trump twice? Does anybody know in the audience out there that when Lincoln was assassinated, he had a bodyguard at the theater and in the museum, and the bodyguard went out on a lunch.
I was going to say, kind of stepped away, right?
He stepped away, went to a bar.
Okay.
He was at the bar on purpose, and I think his name was Harper, and he wasn't there. He came back, he was dead. Do we even know? I go back how this country needs to accelerate Black history. It has to accelerate in understanding that inflation is spelled racism. Inflation is a product of abuses. Inflation is a product of labor, of abusive capitalism, that we are participants in this endeavor. And until we realize that, we're nowhere, and our kids know that. I was hoping I'd live in a different world when I saw the world that I came from, 1945. That was horrible, Holocaust and all that. So I said to myself, well, Luis, I'm going to leave a better world. And then we have Lieutenant Cali, I think is his name, died last week. And I remember My Lai, Vietnam. 500 bodies in a dish, machine gunned them down. Vietnam, pregnant women, children. Some people survived because they were hit under the bodies. You know, dropped a bomb in 1945 on Japan. We don't hold ourselves accountable for that. The first slave ship that landed here in 1492, it might have landed later, but there were black people on that ship, landed here, did start for the United States and this hemisphere, globalization. And globalization is how you spell inflation.
All right. So, this is Luis Quiros. This is Pathology, an Incident. Fourth installment. There'll be more to come. And Luis, just want to thank you for taking the time and giving us your worldview, which may be a little dark, but
it's not dark.
Okay.
No. I'd like to know why I'm getting beat up. You know, because this way I could save myself. It allows us to save ourselves. And this community has access to me. I'm easy to get a hold of if you need to get a hold of me. And I will talk to anybody in private.
Okay. All right. Luis Quiros, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.